Okay, so leaving church, today we had communion and we had a wonderful communion meditation from the book of Micah, chapter 5, verse 8. And the verse says that what are we to do but to love justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. And the gentleman who gave the communion meditation talked about how we are to love justice, not because we are just, but because the God who gave himself as a sacrifice for our sin is just. The God that we serve, he is just, and he loves justice. So we need to love justice. We need to love kindness. Why? Because we are always kind? No, we are not always kind. But the God who we serve, the God who gave himself as a sacrifice, as an atonement for our sin, he is kind and he loves kindness. And he gives us kindness. He gave us kindness. He gave us justice. Well, not really, but he gave us mercy. When he sacrificed himself for our sins. And then we are to walk humbly with our God. Why? Because we're humble? No, we definitely most of the time are not humble. Even sometimes in our humility, it's a false humility, but that's another story for another time. But he gave this image, and I love this image. So at our church, when we do communion, the communion is set up on tables at the four corners of our sanctuary. And so when it's time for communion, we all get up and we go to the tables and we grab our communion elements and we bring them back to our chair. And oftentimes people will grab the communion elements for somebody who isn't feeling well or can't or doesn't walk well, or unstable on their feet, whatever, people who need help, right? But when you see people walking up there, you see them saying, no, after you, all those things, right? We're humbly waiting our turn. We're in the moment of meditation as we're preparing our hearts to take communion and to do this remembrance ceremony. And so he's like, you don't see people elbowing people out of the way as they're walking up to the communion table so that they could be first to get the best elements for the communion, right? So it was just an image of how in every other aspect of our life, we might be trying to claw our way to the top or to go get in front of somebody, or when we're driving in traffic to hurry up so that we can merge in one car ahead. There's all these things that we do that does not represent walking humbly with our God, does not represent the humility of others being more important than ourselves, or just that idea of serving others. And so that's the part that really hit me, is that as we are called to walk humbly with our God, that means that we are called to think of others more highly than ourselves, to make sure that we are making way for other people, to represent Jesus in that, where we are saying, you first. Can I help you? Is there anything that I can do for you? And when we're talking about maybe in our careers or something like that, how can we help the person next to us do better at their job or get that promotion that they've been working towards, even if it means it's something that we are also working towards? But caring about people in a way that makes it a mark that says we love Jesus. We love Jesus and the gift that he gave us so much that we also want to share that with you. So that is what the communion meditation did for my heart today. It was super, super meaningful. And as I sat there mulling over that, I was challenged to think, how am I going to live that out with my family? So even though my children don't live with me, most of them, how do I live out walking humbly with God? How do I make that mark as I am dealing with my children, my adult children, and my little guy who I'm still teaching and training in the way that he should go? That's going to be a challenge, and I'm not sure that I really know the answer to that. But I am so thankful that God has stirred my heart as it comes to this subject because I believe that even in context of talking about James chapter 1, where we're talking about trials and temptations, and I'll get to that sermon summary a little bit later, but as we're talking about that in context, walking humbly with God is definitely one of those characteristics that we want to grow up inside of, that becomes more natural. It becomes the answer to things that we want to have, the response that we want to have, rather than the temptation to be angry, to be me first, to be me centered. How do I live a more God-centered life? So that communion meditation, along with our sermon this week, really met each other in the middle, at least in my heart and in the things that I'm thinking about and the way that I feel I need to be prayerfully thinking about and working on in my own life. If that's something that you find you need to work on a little bit more, you can watch our sermon online, and I really don't know. I guess I'm going to have to check this out sometime. When you go back and watch the sermon on Communion Sunday, if communion is a part of that. I hope that it is, because it was a really great meditation. And if it's not, I'm going to ask them to put it on, because honestly, it was like a mini sermon in itself. It was wonderful. And it really got my heart thinking about that and the sacrifice that Jesus gave as he put himself, he didn't just go to the cross. He willingly went to the cross as a substitute for our sins. And there's no greater sacrifice. And so as we are walking along each day and we're putting ourselves first, we are not considering that sacrifice that Jesus made for us, as we are unwilling to sacrifice ourselves for our neighbor. Let's hit it closer home. Because our neighbor might not be somebody we know, but we're not willing to sacrifice ourselves for our spouse. We're not willing to sacrifice ourselves for our kids, our mother, our father, our sisters, our brothers, our aunts, our uncles, all of those. Like, we are me-centered. How can we be less me-centered? Thank you for listening. This has been just a little something that today at church really just stirred my heart, so I wanted to jump on and quick share. And like, I'm finding more and more lately that there are so many things that are stirring my heart that I can't even keep up with them, even in my own mind and my own heart. And I'm so thankful that God is bringing to light many things that tie together and support each other, so that throughout the week I continue to meditate on these principles that lead to a more full, rich, God-centered life. I hope you have a really great week. Bye now.